Joining me now on this episode of Locally Sourced EP is, I'm going to say, probably the voice and probably the most recognized voice in El Paso and the voice of the UTEP miners, Mr. Jon Teicher. Jon, thank you for joining me today, sir.
Ray, it is my pleasure. Look forward to visiting.
Oh no, I appreciate coming on. I've been doing this for a while. I'm super excited to have you on, and just talk a little bit about you and your career here in El Paso and how everything got started. Jon, talk a little bit. How did you get involved in broadcasting and things like that? How'd you get started in the biz?
Well, growing up in Southern California, I think, Ray, that I was influenced by some of the best ever to grace the sports broadcasting business. Of course, the late Vin Scully, who called the Dodgers for over 60 years. The late Chick Hearn, who was one of the greatest, I think, basketball announcers has ever worked. Chick Hearn was the voice of the Los Angeles Lakers, and at that time, Dick Enberg, before he went to the network ranks, Dick Enberg was the voice of the Los Angeles Rams and at that time the California Angels. So at that time, Vin Scully, Chick Hearn, and Dick Enberg were all ones that certainly influenced me. And when I realized, Ray, that I wasn't going to be able to compete in sports past high school, certainly not at the intercollegiate level, and the pros would have been a pipe dream. Broadcasting was going to be a way for me to stay around athletics and in sports. So I went to UCLA, obtained my degree in political science, but UCLA had a campus radio station, was totally operated by students. And I did a little bit of everything at old KLA radio. I DJ'd, I did some news, and obviously I did a lot of sports play-by-play. And as a senior was the station's general manager as well. And we ran it very much like a professional operation. So I got a nice, I think, broad-based education, totally disconnected from the curriculum as to how professional radio worked, and obviously was able to get experience in doing football and basketball play-by-play and other sports as well while at UCLA, and that's how it all got started.
Wow, that sounds like an awesome start to a career, especially like being down in the California region, just being a part of all that history over there, and then just getting the experience at that radio station, basically running like business, and that's just like experience, and a lot of kids in college don't usually have that when they come out.
No question about it. And it was, again, something that I knew when college was over that I wanted to be able to do professionally. And fortunately, I've done it for over 40 years. My entire post-college adult life has been spent in sports broadcasting. So I've been very, very fortunate.
And then the next question I got for you, which is, how did you end up coming to El Paso? How did you end up here in El Paso?
No, it's a good story. When I was in college, in fact, my junior season, Ray, what I started to do, my goal was to do Major League Baseball. That was going to be my target. Mm-hmm. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to start at the major league level. I knew I'd have to cut my teeth in the minor league. So I started calling all the AAA and AA minor league clubs in America. And to make a long story short, when I called El Paso and talked to Jim Paul, who at that time operated the Diablos, I was well aware of the success that Jim had with, and by the way, I love the hat you're wearing, Ray.
Oh, yeah. And it is on purpose.
Yeah, well, thank you. But I was well aware of, due to all the national publicity that I had read and heard of Jim and what he had accomplished here in El Paso. When I talked to Jim, I asked him, I says, is anybody doing your games on radio? He says, no one is doing my games on radio. And I had been working with a group out of Portland, Oregon. They called themselves the JOC, or the Jock Sports Network. And what they did, Ray, is they bought up the rights, broadcasting rights to minor league, professional, and college teams. and actually sent broadcasters. They actually sold the advertising and brokered time from radio stations and contracted with broadcasters to go in and do the games. So when I found out that El Paso was not on the air, a light went off immediately and bells started ringing. And I got with my friends at Jock and I said, I've got my opportunity. It's in El Paso, Texas, calling El Paso Diablos AA baseball. And they were able to put together a deal with old KTSM radio at the time. And in January of 1980, with my Nissan hatchback packed from floorboard to ceiling, except for the driver's seat, I pulled into El Paso, Texas, and 3 months later, I started broadcasting El Paso Diablos baseball.
That's cool. I bet you a lot of people either didn't know or might have forgotten that you started with the Diablos before heading out to UTEP. I had you down. You started at the Diablos in 1980 into 84, and then you joined them in 88 and carried a little while over, especially with the audio season 89 and back over into Cohen.
Right. And in the interim, the years between 1984 and 88, I did a season of baseball in Portland, Oregon, the Portland Beavers, who now, believe it or not, that franchise is now the Chihuahuas. I was the voice of the franchise that was to become the El Paso Chihuahuas, a little irony there. And then I did a year in Wichita as well, their first year in the Texas League at that time. The Wichita Pilots were Texas League champions in 1987. I did their games for that 1 year. They featured the Alomar brothers, Sandy and Robbie, who went on to terrific major league careers. And then I came back to El Paso when it opened up again in 1988. And as you said, I did the games through 1992. And then I focused solely on UTEP after that.
And then you start. What do you remember? What year you started at UTEP? And were you just calling football or basketball, or were you already just jump right into it?
Well, the 1981-82 season was my first doing UTEP. The 81 football season, the 81-82 basketball season. But before that, Ray, I spent a year, and a lot of people don't know this either, as the voice of the New Mexico State Aggies. I was the voice of the Aggies for 1 year as well. In fact, and this is a terrific story, that same Jock Sports Network, whom I was working for to come down here and do the Diablos games, had obtained the New Mexico State broadcast rights. And so I got a call during that first summer I was doing the Diablo games, and the guys from Jock said, would you like to go over and be the voice of New Mexico State? And of course, not knowing at that time what in the world I was going to do, when that first Diablo baseball season was over with, I was more than thrilled to have the opportunity and go over and be the voice of the Aggies. We had a statewide network with stations throughout the state of New Mexico, including Albuquerque. And so I was the voice of the Aggies for 1 year. And then, just maybe getting a little ahead of where you'd like to be, that second year I came back and did the Diablos. And in the middle of the summer, John Phelan, the general sales manager of KTSM Radio, who at one time himself was the voice of the UTEP Miners, Mr. Phelan called me and he says, John, we've gotten the UTEP broadcast rights. Would you like to come over and be the voice of the UTEP Miners? And it took me about a half second to say yes, because at that time, UTEP was in the WAC with the likes of New Mexico, Colorado State, and Wyoming, and Utah, and BYU, and San Diego State, and Hawaii. And Hawaii.
I remember that.
So that didn't take long. New Mexico State was a nice program. At that time, the Aggies were in the Missouri Valley Conference, so the travel was a little more taxing, I think, for New Mexico State in the Valley than it was for UTEP in the old Western Athletic Conference. So that was an easy decision for me.
Man, the rest is history almost.
Yeah, little did I know that I'd be here 40 more years plus.
Yeah, I mean, sir, it's like, your voice is iconic. I mean, especially here in the Sun City, everyone knows Jon Teicher's voice. Everyone knows. I know you've been elected to El Paso Athletic Hall of Fame, numerous awards. I think like one thing I would like to ask is, like, do you have like a pregame prep? Like what are some of the things you do before you get ready to, call the game?
Well, it's a lot easier these days, Ray, than it was back when I started, because back then you basically relied on printed material, and there was no such thing as the internet. So, it was newspapers and magazines and media guides and stuff like that. And obviously, you talked to coaches as well, and there was a lot of communication verbally in that regard as well that got you ready. Now it's a lot easier because you can go on the internet and basically find anything you need to help in your preparation. But, I think all broadcasters have their own personal cycle of preparation. It's one of the things I really enjoy about what I do. And when I don't enjoy it, Ray, that's probably one of the barometers that'll tell me it's time to move on and find something else to do. But I still enjoy the preparation. During football season, obviously the game cycle is usually Saturday to Saturday. So, once the game's finished on Saturday, maybe you give yourself a little break on Sunday, and then on Monday it starts. I mean, you start reading everything you can possibly get your hands on. You research, you talk to people. I try and attend practice as much as I possibly can. I rarely miss a UTEP football practice. I have to miss more basketball practices than probably I'd like because of the crossover between the two sports early in the basketball season in November. But I gain a lot by watching practice and being around the student athletes and the coaching staff. So all of that goes into what broadcast day brings, whether it be a football Saturday or whether it's a game in basketball that certainly before conference play begins could be any day of the week.
Right. No, like a lot of people. So I'm pretty sure there's still a lot of people out there that just think like you just sit down and you have all the information right there in front of you. I mean, I've talked to Mr. Haggerty over with the El Paso Chihuahuas, and it's like he's got his own ritual. And then he even says like if he doesn't know how to pronounce the name, he'll physically go down and talk to the players. That way he gets it right. Like perfect example he made is that he's got two players on the team, I think right now. They're both Angel, but one of them pronounces it Angel. And Mr. Haggerty also said that the player that pronounces it Angel, because it's kind of like a little appreciative that he was going that extra mile. Like, no, I want to pronounce it the way you do and the way your family does. So that's just so cool that things like that you all do. Just, like I said, people don't know the work you guys put into it from behind the scenes. They think you just jump on this microphone and just keep going.
Well, basically, what you put into it is what you get out of it, Ray. If you don't put the work in, if you don't put the preparation in, and when I talk to youngsters about broadcasting or about anything in general, that's my message to them: is that preparation is basically the key for anything you do. Mm-hmm. If you want to be successful at anything, preparation and being ready and prepared for whatever opportunity you might have is just such a key.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just brag about it right now. I was like I had some research that I did with you, and like according to some of like the sites you've done about like maybe a little under 500 football games, about 493, and nearly like 1,300 basketball games you've called, and that is so impressive and crazy. Those numbers are crazy.
Yeah, it's particularly if you look at the football, I'll do my 500th game this year, the 7th game of the season at FIU in October on a Wednesday, ironically. But I've missed only one UTEP football game in 42 years, and I take a lot of pride in that. The only time generally I've missed a UTEP basketball game is, again, when we have that crossover in November, and sometimes there's some conflicts in the schedule with between UTEP football and basketball that will force me to choose to be one place or another. And I'm always going to finish the football season if there's a conflict with basketball. So I've always done that. But it's something I take a lot of pride in, Ray, is that's my job. That's what I do. And if there's a UTEP football game or basketball game, I'm going to be there.
Oh, dang. That's just so cool. Like the dedication you've had. I mean, I know me, and I'm pretty sure a lot of El Pasoans feel the same way, that they appreciate everything you've done for UTEP and this city, and just, like I said, your voice is iconic, sir. It's like there's nothing else like it here.
Well, I've been very, very fortunate, and to be able to do the university's games in the same market for more than 4 decades has been an absolute honor and privilege for me. And obviously, what transpires is the generations of fans form a connection with the play-by-play voice of a professional team, be it a major or minor league or university, as I did when I was growing up. Again, talking about my connections with the broadcasters of the professional teams in Southern California, and even the collegiate teams, UCLA and USC as well. So having experienced that in my formative years, I certainly understand what those that have listened to me over the years might be feeling themselves.
One of my memories of like going to the games, like with the families, I know like my dad and some other people, they would have the headphones and listen to your broadcast while we were there at the game. I just thought that was, and I didn't realize what they were doing at the time, but now I did, and that's just something really neat that I can like share, that they were listening to your voice called play by play while they were watching the game. So that's kind of cool.
Well, it's hopefully something that added to their enjoyment while they were sitting in the Don Haskins Center in the Sun Bowl Stadium, watching the game.
Yeah. Well, John, I need to ask. Is there a certain like memory or game that stands out in your mind that you always think about? Maybe a little like short story that you'd want to tell, that your favorite, like either favorite play or favorite game you've called, either like, for example, like with what the UTEP minor football, or maybe something with Don Haskins. Is there something that sticks out in your mind, like you could share with us?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, and I can cite, and there have been numerous games, Ray, but certainly there's one on the football side and one on the basketball side that sticks out. And in basketball, it'd have to be the 1992 NC2A basketball tournament, and UTEP's victory. In fact, victories in the first 2 rounds, but the victory in Kansas City in the second round of the tournament that year over the top-seeded Kansas Jayhawks that sent UTEP to the round of 16, the Sweet 16 of the NC2A tournament. It was kind of Don Haskins' return to the national stage, having almost 2 decades before, of course, winning that 1966 historic national championship. It was kind of a return to the national stage for him. And of course, no one expected UTEP, no one outside of El Paso expected UTEP to win that particular game. And the winner went to Kansas City. And of course, Kansas fans were bitterly disappointed not to be able to go to Kansas City. But the Miners put on a clinic and defeated the Jayhawks in Dayton, Ohio, to win that game. And I can remember we used to do, Ray, a post-game call-in show after the games. And that day in Dayton, Ohio, we took calls after the Miners had defeated the mighty Jayhawks for 7 hours. Whoa. 7 hours after the game. It was an afternoon game. And it may have been 10 o'clock at night. We finally took our last call, and people just kept calling and calling and calling. Such was the joy of sports and basketball and UTEP fans in this area. So that has to be the game that sticks out for me there in terms of basketball. Football, much different circumstances. 1985, the Miners had a late October game with BYU in the Sun Bowl Stadium. BYU was the defending national champion. They had won the national championship in 1984. And UTEP came into that late October game in the Sun Bowl in 1985, winless at the time, and had suffered a waxing at the hands of Kent State in Kent, Ohio, a non-conference game the week before. So there was very little hope that the Miners could upset the defending national champion Cougars, but that's just what they did. The Miners knocked off BYU on that October night, 23-16. There were 22,000 fans there. There were probably 3 times that many El Pasoans that probably said they were there, but there were 22,000 fans officially in the Sun Bowl Stadium that night. It would be the only game the Miners would win that particular season, and that season ended with UTEP playing the first college football game ever having been played on the Australian continent.
Oh, wow.
Miners and the Wyoming Cowboys on December 5th of 1985 closed the season with a Western Athletic Conference game on the cricket grounds in Melbourne, Australia. And both coaching staffs had been fired. And so you're talking about lame duck coaching staffs. UTEP had won only that one game against BYU, would not win that game against Wyoming. But what an experience we had spending a week in Australia to play the first ever football game on the Australian continent. It was quite an experience.
Dang, and I'm sure you have like stories for days. Or I mean, I'm still a little celebrity struck with you being on here with me, because like I said, it's truly an honor to have you on and just talk a little bit about your career and things that you've done. And like I said, just hearing your voice, it's so cool to hear. And I guess not in person, but I guess over Zoom, but even through my speakers, it's just like, yep, that's Jon Teicher's voice.
Well, thank you.
No, well, Mr. Teicher, I know if I thank you for your time, but is there anything else you'd like to say or add about your career, things you've done in El Paso, anything you'd like, anyone else, anything else like to say or add today?
Well, it's just I again, Ray, I've been so very, very fortunate to spend my entire post-college adult life in El Paso, Texas. Again, what a great, great place to live. And what a great, great culture we have. And for the most part, it's been a hot summer, but for the most part, the weather is pretty much ideal as well. We've got the best Mexican food you'll find in the United States of America, bar none. And but it's the people. It's the people that make this community special. And it's been such an honor and a privilege for me to be able to describe the university's games. And this program means such a great deal to this community. And what an honor it's been for me for more than 4 decades to be able to describe, whether it at home or away, all the games that this great university has contested at that time. So, I've been truly blessed. That's for sure.
I appreciate it. Again, Jon Teicher joining me today. I'll include all the information in the description below, like where everyone can hear the games. I'll put a link in the description. Make sure I'll put all the information as well. All the games are broadcast. I know the different places, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, 600 ESPN El Paso is our flagship station for both the games and Coach Dimmel's weekly show, Coach Golding and Coach Adams' basketball show during the UTEP basketball season. We will have 4 football games this year on 95.5 KLAQ, which is one of the FM sister stations, 600 ESPN. There's conflict. The Chihuahuas, of course, are also on 600 ESPN, and their season runs through the month of September. So we're going to have 4 of our first 5 games on 95.5 KLAQ.
Oh, Mr. Teicher, I'll make sure I include all that info. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, and let's hope to have a good season for both football and basketball this year.
Well, let's hope so. I'm very optimistic, Ray. I think both basketball and football have a chance to be very, very successful this year in the reconfigured Conference USA. Thank you for asking me to come on with you and the opportunity to do this, and I've enjoyed it a whole lot.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. And as always, picks up, go Miners.
Picks up, go Miners.